Imagine a problem so widespread yet kind of hidden that it could quietly chip away at the brain power of millions, affect growth, even tragically influence whether life begins at all. Now, what if I told you this massive issue with these really profound consequences could be tackled with something as simple as every day, as salt? Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into complex sources so you get the key insights. Today, we're taking a truly comprehensive look at one of India's biggest, longest-running public health successes, the National Iodine Deficiency Disorders Control Program, or NIDDCP. We're going to unpack this huge effort, drawing straight from the detailed materials provided, especially those excerpts from India's Iodine Deficiency Control Program. Our mission really is to explore the science. Why is iodine so critical? Then trace how this national strategy evolved over decades to fight what was essentially a hidden epidemic. And we'll also look at the challenges that, still exist today. It's quite a story.
It really is. And what's so fascinating, I think, is just how fundamental iodine is. Even though it's a trace element needed in tiny amounts, it's absolutely essential for making our thyroid hormones, thyroxine, T4, and tridothyronine and T3.
Right, the thyroid hormones.
And these aren't just any hormones. They're like the master controls for our metabolism, our growth, and maybe most critically, our brain development. Without enough iodine, the whole system just doesn't work right.
And the amount we actually need daily, it's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
It is just 150 micrograms a day for an adult.
Micrograms.
Yeah. To give you a sense, that's like smaller than a single grain of sand.
Wow. Yet missing even that tiny bit can set off this whole cascade of really devastating health problems.
So, okay, if it's that vital, where do we actually get it from naturally? I mean, most people probably think seafood first, right?
Seafood is definitely a big one. Fish like cod, tuna, shellfish like shrimp, seaweed, especially like kelp or nori, they soak it up from seawater, which is rich in iodine.
Yep.
But it gets into other foods in ways you might not expect. Like, where else does it show up?
Well, dairy products, for instance. Milk, cheese, yogurt. They contain iodine.
Really?
Yeah, partly because cattle feed is often fortified, but also because iodine-based disinfectants are used in the dairy industry.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Eggs, too, particularly the yolk, have moderate amounts. Meat and poultry have a bit, but then you get to vegetables and grains.
And that's where it gets tricky.
Exactly. It's completely variable. It all depends on how much iodine is in the soil they're grown in. If the soil's poor in iodine, the plants will be too.
That soil variability is such a key point. It really highlights why just relying on natural sources can be unreliable and how deficiency can become so widespread. And this leads us to a really important shift in understanding the problem itself. For ages, the focus was just on endemic goiter, that visible swelling in the neck. But the sources stress this crucial change in terminology, broadening it to iodine deficiency disorders, IDD. Why was that so important?
Oh, that shift was absolutely critical because goiter is just the tip of the iceberg, the most obvious sign. IDD acknowledges the full, devastating range of problems caused by not having enough iodine.
So what else falls under that umbrella?
Well, besides goiter, you have cretinism, which is severe, irreversible brain damage and physical stunting, manifesting in neurological or myxedematous forms. Then there's hypothyroidism, impaired mental function even in adults, delayed physical development in kids.
It goes on.
It does. Increased risk of stillbirths, spontaneous abortions, higher perinatal mortality overall. It affects life at every stage.
It's like a silent thief, really, undermining potential right from the start, often invisibly.
Exactly. It's about seeing the full picture, the often hidden damage.
So, given how devastating these effects are, who's most vulnerable? Who bears the brunt of this?
The worst impacts, the irreversible damage, hits the most vulnerable populations hardest. For the developing fetus, severe iodine deficiency in the mother can lead to profound mental retardation, stillbirths.
Unbelievable.
For newborns, it's a major cause of cretinism. And then for children, it leads to goiter, yes, but also learning disabilities, lower performance in school.
And this is where, for me, it gets really eye-opening. The sources point out that even mild iodine deficiency in kids who might look perfectly healthy, no visible goiter can still lead to a measurable drop in IQ.
Yes.
Attention deficits, poor school performance. It's not just the severe cases, it's the subtle, widespread impact on cognitive potential that's huge.
Absolutely huge. That subtly drags down the potential of individuals and collectively the potential of a whole nation. It really reframes the urgency of the problem.
So let's talk scale. How big was this problem globally and specifically in India?
Globally, the WHO estimates something like 1.9 billion people are at risk of IDDs. That's a staggering number.
Wow.
In India, historically, it's been endemic across almost the entire country. Back in the 1960s, estimates were around 9 million people affected. But even more recent surveys, covering about 263 districts, suggest around 71 million people are still suffering from some form of IDD. 71 million. Even with progress, that's still an enormous number. And I guess the infamous Himalaya Goitre belt was ground zero for this.
It was, yes. That region has historically very low iodine levels in the soil and water due to geological factors, leading to very high rates of goiter and other IDDs. It was a major focus early on.
Okay, so faced with this massive nationwide challenge, how did India even begin to tackle it? This is where the story of the national program really starts.
Right. Well, the formal response kicked off back in 1962. That's when the National Goiter Control Program, the NGCP, was launched. Initially, it focused just on those known endemic areas like the Himalayan belt.
So, tackling the obvious first.
Pretty much. But then, 30 years later, in 1992, came a really significant shift.
What happened then?
The program was officially renamed. It became the National Iodine Deficiency Disorders Control Program, NIDDCP.
Reflecting that broader understanding we talked about.
Exactly. It wasn't just about goiter anymore. It was about preventing that whole spectrum of disorders, especially the impact on brain development. And then came another big step in 1997.
Yes, Universal Salt Iodization USI was made mandatory under the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act. That was a huge policy decision.
So why the evolution? What drove this change from just controlling goiter in specific areas to this comprehensive mandatory national program?
Several things came together. One was simply a deeper scientific understanding of just how many roles iodine plays in the body. Two, and this was critical, was the mounting evidence that serious brain damage could happen even if someone didn't have a visible goiter.
Ah, the invisible damage again.
Precisely. That really shifted the focus from just treatment to prevention. It became clear they needed a much broader, more robust approach to nationwide prevention and monitoring.
Okay, so with this bigger mandate, what were the specific goals of the revamped NIDDCP? What were they trying to achieve?
The objectives became much clearer and more ambitious. First, survey the extent of the problem, figure out the magnitude of IDD in every district. Second, ensure the supply of properly iodized salt reached everyone.
And it couldn't just be a one-off effort, right? You'd need to track progress.
Absolutely. So a key objective was regular surveys, say every 5 years, to see how things were changing, to assess the impact. This had to be backed by solid lab work, monitoring the iodine levels in salt samples, and also measuring urinary iodine levels in the population.
Urinary iodine, why is that important?
It's a key biomarker. It tells you how much iodine people are actually absorbing and using. It reflects recent iodine intake.
Got it.
And finally, a massive public health education component, getting the word out, making people aware. The ultimate goal, to completely eliminate IDDs as a public health problem in India.
That's a massive undertaking. So what was the actual strategy? What were the nuts and bolts of making this happen across such a vast country?
The absolute cornerstone, the heart of the strategy, is universal salt iodization, USI.
Right.
And there are specific standards. Salt needs to have at least 30 parts per million, or ppm, of iodine when it leaves the factory, and critically, at least 15 ppm when it reaches the household kitchen.
Why the drop? Does iodine disappear?
It can, yeah. Iodine can be lost during transport and storage, especially in humid conditions, or if the packaging isn't great. So that 15 ppm level at home ensures people are still getting enough. And these levels are regulated under the Food Safety and Standards Act 2006.
But why salt? Of all things, why pick salt as the delivery vehicle?
It's actually kind of brilliant. Salt is consumed by practically everyone across all regions, all income levels,
Sure.
and people's salt consumption is remarkably stable day to day, year round. It doesn't vary wildly like some other foods might. So it's an incredibly efficient and equitable way to deliver that tiny, crucial amount of iodine to the entire population consistently.
Simple, yet incredibly effective. Are we talking just regular table salt?
It covers various types: common crystalline salt, the refined iodized salt you typically see, spray-dried salt, and there's also an interesting innovation being piloted: double fortified salt, or DFS.
Double fortified. What else is in it?
Iron. So DFS tackles both iodine deficiency and iron deficiency anemia at the same time, which is another major public health issue, especially among women and children. It's a really smart, integrated approach.
Very clever. Okay, so you've got the iodized salt being produced and sent out. How does the program check if it's actually reaching people correctly and having an effect? What's the monitoring look like?
Monitoring and evaluation are crucial ongoing parts of the NIDDCP. There are dedicated IDD control cells and food safety officers who do this. They test salt samples both qualitatively, like with simple spot test kits, and quantitatively in labs.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, they monitor urinary iodine levels in the population. The target is to have a median level of at least 100 micrograms per liter, which indicates the population as a whole is getting enough iodine.
Beyond the lab tests, what about winning hearts and minds, getting people to actually use the iodized salt, maybe instead of non-iodized salt they're used to?
Yeah, that's where health education comes in. It's a vital part of the strategy. Using mass media, TV, radio, print, but also interpersonal communication, like health workers talking directly to families, and using school health programs.
That's the message.
It's about promoting the use of iodized salt, explaining why it's important, especially for pregnant women and children, and also busting any myths or misinformation that might be floating around, building that public understanding and demand.
And you mentioned this involves multiple government departments. It sounds like a huge coordination effort.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be. It involves the Ministry of Health, of course, but also departments dealing with industry, salt production, civil supplies distribution, railways, transport, education, schools. It's a real cross-sectoral collaboration. Couldn't work otherwise.
So with all these pieces moving together, the salt, the monitoring, the education, the coordination, how do they know if they're succeeding? What are the main yardsticks for success?
There are clear key indicators they track. The big one for salt is household coverage. The target is getting adequately iodized salt into at least 90% of homes.
Okay, 90%.
Then there's the median urinary iodine excretion, that biomarker we talked about. The goal is keeping that median at or above 100 micrograms per liter.
And what about goiter, the original visible sign?
Still important. They track goiter prevalence specifically in school kids aged 6 to 12. The target is to get that below 5%. And ideally, of course, you want to see no new cases of Cretinism popping up.
Right.
Plus, there's ongoing surveillance using those spot testing kits in the field, alongside the more detailed lab testing of salt.
That gives a really clear picture of the strategy and the targets. So fast forward decades later, what are the results? What has this massive comprehensive NIDDCP actually achieved? And where are the gaps still?
Well, the achievements are definitely significant. There's been a huge increase in the number of households using adequately iodized salt. The latest national survey data, NFHS5, puts it around 88%.
Wow, that's close to the 90% target.
Very close. And this has translated into documented reductions in goiter prevalence in many parts of the country. Plus, public awareness about why iodine matters is definitely much higher than it used to be.
That's genuinely impressive, especially given India's scale. But I imagine it hasn't been perfectly smooth sailing. What are the persistent challenges?
No, definitely challenges remain. Consistent quality control is a big one, ensuring the iodine levels are right at the production stage and maintained through the whole distribution chain. That's tricky.
And I remember you mentioned non-iodized salt.
Yes, there's still an issue with cheaper non-iodized salt being smuggled or sold, especially from smaller unregulated producers. That can undercut the program.
And the iodine itself can degrade, right?
Exactly. Poor storage, particularly humidity, can cause iodine loss before the salt even gets used. Then there's the issue of lab capacity, having enough labs, especially in rural areas, equipped to do the urinary iodine testing needed for good monitoring. It's often limited. And ensuring the program remains strong and sustainable in really remote, underserved, or tribal areas where logistics and infrastructure are tougher, that's an ongoing effort.
It sounds like a program that needs constant vigilance and adaptation.
Yeah.
So how is the NIDDCP evolving now? Is it being linked with other health initiatives?
Yes, it's definitely not static. One key move is integrating IDD control into broader nutrition platforms, like the big Pioshan Afian campaign. This recognizes that micronutrient deficiencies often overlap.
Makes sense.
And we talked about the double fortified salt that's being actively promoted now through huge government schemes like the midday meal program in schools and the Integrated Child Development Services, ICDS, for young children and mothers, targeting those key groups.
Using existing platforms to deliver it.
Yeah.
Smart. Any tech involved.
Yes, there's piloting happening with real-time digital monitoring tools in some areas, trying to use tech to improve data collection and tracking efficiency. And the Food Safety Authority, FSSAI, includes promoting iodized salt within its larger Eat Right India movement, so it's becoming more embedded.
So many different angles, but ultimately it comes down to people on the ground making it happen, right? Who are the key health workers involved?
Absolutely critical. You have medical officers in clinics and hospitals. They're diagnosing cases, pushing health education messages, coordinating local SALT testing.
And the community level workers.
Essential. The A&Ms, auxiliary nurse midwives, and the ASAs, accredited social health activists, they're the front line. They use those spot testing kits right in people's homes. They educate mothers, pregnant women. They're the ones likely to spot a child with goiter and refer them to a clinic. They are the real grassroots connectors for the program.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it really seems India's NIDDCP is a landmark public health story. One of the country's earliest and arguably most effective large-scale nutrition interventions, with such a strong focus on prevention.
It really is a testament to what sustained public health action can achieve, and the core message remains simple but powerful. Iodine deficiency is completely preventable. As the sources make clear, continued effort in monitoring and enforcing the standards, in keeping the public informed, that's what's needed to finally eliminate IDDs for good.
It just makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How something so basic, so everyday as salt, when strategically fortified, can have such a massive positive impact on a nation's health, especially cognitive development. It's a powerful example of a seemingly small intervention having huge consequences.
It really is, and it does raise a fascinating question for all of us, If this one tiny trace element, iodine, can have such a profound yet often hidden impact on brain health and productivity, what other seemingly small things, other invisible deficiencies or simple accessible interventions might be out there quietly shaping health and development around the world? What else might we be missing?
What stands out to you from this deep dive today?